So after talking to some people in the class about preservation units and what goes into them, it seemed like there were a lot of people who thought that a lot more was needed for a preservation unit than is necessarily the case. So I thought it might be helpful to make a video of some of the things we do at University of Georgia in the preservation department and what the layout of the space is. So I'm down in the basement right now at the preservation department. You can see it's a fairly spacious area. It doesn't need to be this big, but it's nice having a little bit more space and a window. Yes, we have a window in the basement. A little weird. I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the different areas and talk a little bit about what we do to kind of give an idea of how this preservation unit functions. So this is our table of our presses, which I will come back by and talk a little bit about. I want to start with the basic tools and materials that we use. So what we have is a couple of different things. We have glue. In here is just basic PVA. It's an archival quality glue. And then next to it we have a mix, which is methacellulose mixed with PVA. It makes it a little bit thinner. You can see it's a little bit more watery. But the main thing that we use methacellulose for is the same thing as PVA. It dries a little bit slower. So it allows us to, especially when we have to put large end sheets on, or we might need to pull something up and then put it back down, it gives a little bit more wiggle room. Some of the other things, bone folders. So these are for if you have a book, these can help to push down the hinge. It can smooth things out, where you put glue or glue on the end sheets, things like that. We've got micro spatulas, which are good for getting up under covers, lifting, getting into tight spaces to get some glue in there, really doing whatever you might need with them. There's a pointier end and a flatter end. We've got scissors, tweezers, a cutting instrument. Some folks use, you can use anything. You can use an X-Acto knife, you can use this. These are nice because you can get right up against the edge of the book. There's not a whole lot of stuff sticking out, so you don't have to cut it at an angle. You can cut it straight up and down much easier without the book and your hand meeting, or the book and the knife. And then we have a straight edge. And then we have some weights to help apply pressure after glue has been applied. This is just a brick covered in some paper. We've got some lead weights. We have some other weights around. Which I might come across. Not exactly sure where they are, but they're just little black hand weights. And then we have a couple of blades. Not necessary, but definitely make getting end sheets and things off. You can just kind of scrape the paper off. Same thing with this. It gives a little bit more angle. These are paring blades. And then we have I don't know what this is actually called. It's just some sandpaper, though, wrapped around a little foam sponge, and it allows us to kind of smooth away any leftover paper from end sheets that we're trying to remove, or pieces of cover, or whatever, depending on what we're working on. And then basic Mars eraser, which is great for getting rid of smudges and marks within books. So that is the basic kind of tool setup. And so down here, we use all of those things to do a few different things. First off, we do tip-in, adhere, and hinge repairs. So those are the simplest repairs we do. And I grabbed a book to use to show those examples. So I didn't have a book. This is a book. All the books that we repair, we write whatever identifying number there is, whether it's an LC number or a different number. These came from a different department, not in the library, that we're doing some repairs for. And then the repairs. So this needs an adhere and a hinge. Hinge is a basic repair. You can see here how this is weak. So if we don't fix this, this end sheet's eventually going to tear. The book's going to get weakened, and we're going to have to do a more costly repair in terms of time. If we fix this now, then it's a 5-minute fix, and it's done for a while. And basically the way we do that is we get a sewing needle or something of the sort. Some folks use card catalog rods, and we have a old dish soap container that we stick it in. It's filled with PVA. You pull it out, and you just, I'm doing this one-handed, so it's not the best, but you would have that coated with glue. You would slide it in. It'd be ideal if this were actually vertical, so I'll demonstrate it the best I can. Sorry about, it's a little hard to hold the camera and do this, but you slide it in, you rotate it while you go, and you would do this on both sides, and then close it all together. The other repair this book is going to need is an adhere. An adhere just refers to where two pages have separated out partially or entirely, but the pages are still attached to other pages in the book. And what we're gonna do with this one is we'll take a piece of scrap paper and hold it up, make a little area about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch. Get in there, so you can see where that's where the paper is. We'll get a paintbrush. It would have glue on it, and then while holding that paper, you would just run it along. So it's just going to place glue on that small area, and then you would close it back up after taking out the scrap paper and put weight on it and let it sit overnight. The one other repair that fell into that category of kind of shorter repairs was the tip-in, which is if a page has been removed entirely. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to put a piece of scrap paper down, make a row of glue, put the page in, and then another piece of scrap paper, another row of glue, and then close it, and then weight it. And that's how you would replace the page in it. The second set of repairs that we do are spine repairs. Let me get an example of that. So this is a good example of a spine repair. The spine is coming apart, separating out. If this is allowed to continue, it's going to cause all kinds of problems. You can see the hinge is loose there. It'll eventually tear those. Plus, if it goes far enough, all of the title or the LC number can get pulled off. So what we do with that, I'm not going to go through it entirely, but we basically cut along the cover with the X-Acto knife, or the scalpel as we use, cut down using along the straight edge, and then you do that on both sides, and then you would use a micro spatula to wedge up under there, peel it off, and you peel off the spine. And what you do is then you cut the title portion off, much as shown here, and you replace it with a piece of buckram. And it looks a little bit more complicated than it is. It's a fairly easy repair. It just takes a little bit of time. The next repair that we do are end sheets. So this is not a good example of end sheet. I will just use this one again. Actually, let's see. So it's not quite an end sheet. Let's pretend this were the end sheet and it's split. So the only way this is actually would be an adhere, but if it's an end sheet, we would need to take off the end sheet, take off the fly page, and then we would put a new one in. Probably the most time-consuming repair that we do, because it requires us to remove this entirely, which often the old glue is really stuck, and then that's when tools like paring knife as well as the sanding block can come in handy. We'll put a new one down, paste it in. For larger books, you really got to use the glue mix so that it doesn't dry too quickly. And then you close it up. Okay, the other thing that we do is a recase. And a recase is basically when, as you can see there, everything's just coming apart. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take off the end sheets, take out the text block, remove it entirely, and put new cloth onto the text block, put it back into the book, put new end sheets in, and the cover. So we do those when the cover's in good shape, but both end sheets are coming off to the extent that they're separating. So this cloth, for example, you can see is pretty much gone. That's why we're going to do that. And it really strengthens the book. It makes it oftentimes better than the condition we've gotten it in new. So those are the repairs that we work on. The stuff that we don't work on, we put into phase boxes, which, for those who haven't seen a phase box, it's just a box. Protects the books that we have. This phase box actually needs some repair work because the Velcro needs to be put back on. But it creates a clamshell. Just use these glue containers to hold it open. And then the book sits inside. So we use this for fragile books, which have pages that are too brittle to really be repaired well, or the covers are too brittle, or sometimes they're oversized. And these will sit on the shelf, so you can still see the title and the LC number. And they just help to protect the books and prolong everything. Our preservation unit, what we really focus on is the circulating collection and really preserving the information inside, however that makes sense to do. So sometimes we'll make copies of pages, Xerox copies, and tip those back in if pages are missing. We'll do the spine repairs, we'll get phase boxes. Our purpose is really to get the books back on the shelf so they can be used. Just a quick walk around. Here is where our buckram is. Definitely don't need all of those colors. You can easily get by with just black or red or any of those, but we do so many books, so we have a lot of them, and then they're stored in rolls that we've cut up in the card catalog. This is a picture of the shelf, our repair shelf, where we separate things out based off of the repairs that they will need. And then this is our phase box shelf. So all of these books will be getting phase boxes. They're just too fragile for repair for one reason or another, and so they'll be put into phase boxes so they can still be used. And then we have our press table. You can see we have one pretty old press, Victorian era, and that was gifted to us from the National Bindery when it was closing up. And it is a cool thing, but is not nearly as useful as the newer ones. It doesn't go up very high, doesn't have a lot of space underneath it, but it is fun to use just because it's so old and big and heavy. These are the ones we use more often, and you can see they are something that with a little bit of skill and patience and DIY know-how, you could probably make yourself for like under $100, and these are great. We have book boards, which we will you put the book in between. Grab one. These little edges fit right in the hinge, and so they're perfect. You put an end sheet in, you need to weight it. You sandwich this between two boards, just like this one, or with the spine, and then you can just turn everything down, and it tightens it down, and you can let it sit overnight, over the weekend, however long. It doesn't really matter. You can just get back to it when you're able to get back to it. So that is the preservation department down here, and we do some other things on the side, just with when we get water damaged things or whatever. Oh, and there was one more thing. So this, I will end on this. This is kind of a list to give you an idea of what we do work on. And so you may need to pause as we go to be able to read this well. I want to get close enough so that you can read it. It's a list that is a rough list. We don't follow it hard and fast, but as you can see, there's the to fix and preservation, right? And there's all the repairs that we do here. And then below that are the things that we send to the bindery. So a cover is water stained or dirty, pages or end sheets are water stained, mildew, book is too brittle, 3-ring binder, book was fixed by preservation once before. So things like that we tend to send to the bindery. Now we do make exceptions for some of these things. For example, the cover is gouged. Let's say that's the case. It might just be that it's a relatively small gouge and we can fill it in with a Japanese tissue paper and PVA mixture and then be done with it. So it really kind of depends. And sometimes we'll experiment with some lesser things, but that's kind of a general overview of what we fix in preservation and then what we will send to the bindery. Anyways, so that is a little bit longer than I had meant to do. I meant to do about a 10-minute video, and it's looking like about 16 minutes right now. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me or put the questions up on the discussion forums on Blackboard or whatever, and I will do the best I can to answer those. Alright, thanks for watching.